For 8 years, Colonel Thomas Hayes flew commercial airlines every month. Business class when he could afford it, economy when he couldn't. He'd board quietly, stow his carry-on, take his window seat, and spend the flight reading or sleeping. The flight attendants knew him as a polite regular. Other passengers never gave him a second glance. He was just another businessman in his early 60s. Graying hair, reading glasses, worn leather briefcase. Unremarkable. Forgettable. Until United Flight 227 from Denver to Chicago hit severe turbulence at 35,000 feet. The captain collapsed over the controls and the co-pilot started screaming into the radio that they needed help. That's when the quiet man in seat 12A stood up, walked calmly to the cockpit, and said 5 words that changed everything. "I can land this aircraft." What happened in the next 47 minutes would be called the miracle over. Illinois, a perfect emergency landing executed by a passenger who had never flown before. Except Thomas Hayes had flown before. 3,247 hours in an F-22 Raptor, combat missions over Syria and Iraq, and he'd landed aircraft in conditions that would make this emergency look like a training exercise. If you're already wondering how this ordinary-looking passenger in seat 12A will handle an emergency that terrifies a trained co-pilot, hit that like button now. And subscribe, because what happens in the next 30 minutes will show you why the calmest person in a crisis is often the most dangerous. Trust me, you won't believe how this ends. The Boeing 737-800 had been in the air for exactly 47 minutes when senior flight attendant Rebecca Martinez noticed something was wrong. She'd been working for United for 22 years. She knew the rhythm of a normal flight the way a musician knows a familiar song. And right now, the rhythm was off. The turbulence had started about 10 minutes ago. Not unusual for December over the Rockies. Light chop, some bumps, nothing the passengers couldn't handle. The seatbelt sign had come on. People had stopped their conversations and gripped their armrests. Standard procedure, but then the turbulence got worse. The aircraft dropped suddenly, that stomach-lurching feeling like a too-fast elevator. Overhead bins rattled. A woman screamed. Coffee spilled. Still manageable, but getting uncomfortable. Rebecca was making her way back to her jump seat when she saw First Officer David Chen stumble out of the cockpit. His face was pale, his movements jerky with panic. "We need help," he said, his voice cracking. Captain Morrison collapsed. "I think it's his heart. I need someone who knows CPR, and I need them now." Rebecca's training kicked in immediately. "I'm certified." "Show me." She followed Chen into the cockpit, and her heart sank. Captain Jack Morrison, 58 years old, 30 years of flying experience, was slumped over the control yoke. His face was gray. His breathing was shallow and irregular. Classic signs of cardiac arrest. "How long?" Rebecca asked, already reaching for Morrison's neck to check his pulse. 2 minutes. Maybe 3. I was trying to fly and help him and call ATC and... Chen was spiraling, his voice rising with each word. "Focus," Rebecca said sharply. "You fly. I'll handle the captain. Have you declared an emergency?" "Yes. Denver Center's trying to vector us to the nearest airport. But the turbulence... I can't. This isn't..." Rebecca understood immediately. Chen was a good first officer, competent, professional, but he was young, maybe 28, 29, and this was his first real emergency. Having your captain collapse while flying through severe turbulence was a scenario that appeared in training videos but wasn't supposed to happen in real life. "You can do this," Rebecca said, starting chest compressions on Morrison. "Just keep us level. ATC will guide you." But as she worked, she could feel the aircraft shuddering, bouncing, the turbulence getting worse instead of better. And Chen's breathing was getting faster, more panicked. This was bad. She pressed the call button for the other flight attendants. "This is Rebecca. I need someone to make an announcement. We have a medical emergency with the flight crew. Ask if there are any doctors or medical professionals on board. And ask if there are any pilots. Military, civilian, private. Anyone with flight experience." Through the open cockpit door, she could hear the announcement echoing through the cabin. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing a medical emergency with our flight crew. If there are any medical professionals or anyone with pilot experience on board, please press your call button immediately." Rebecca continued compressions. Morrison's pulse was thready, weak. She'd been a flight attendant long enough to know what a heart attack looked like, and this was a bad one. Footsteps approached the cockpit, fast, purposeful. A man's voice, calm and steady. "Flight attendant, I have flight experience. How can I help?" Rebecca looked up and saw him for the first time. Early 60s, about 6 feet tall, graying hair cut short, reading glasses hanging from his neck. He wore khakis and a button-down shirt. He looked like someone's dad, a math teacher. "An accountant. Are you a pilot?" Rebecca asked. "Yes." "Commercial? Private? Military? Retired? When did you last fly?" 4 years ago, Rebecca made a split-second decision. They had a first officer who was panicking, a captain who was dying, and 183 passengers whose lives depended on getting this aircraft on the ground safely. A retired military pilot was better than no pilot at all. "Take the right seat," she said. "Help the first officer. I'll keep working on the captain." The man, his name tag from TSA screening was still visible. Hayes. T moved into the cockpit with the kind of confidence that came from having done this 1,000 times before. He didn't rush, didn't hesitate. Just stepped over Morrison's legs, settled into the co-pilot seat that Chen had vacated, and immediately began scanning the instruments. "First Officer Chen," Hayes said calmly. "I'm Tom Hayes. I'm going to help you fly this aircraft." "Talk to me. What's our situation?" Chen's voice was shaking. "Severe turbulence. Captain collapsed maybe 5 minutes ago. Denver Center's trying to vector us to Colorado Springs. But I can't. The turbulence is—" "You're doing fine," Hayes interrupted, his voice steady as bedrock. "I've got the aircraft. You handle communications." Deep breath. "You've trained for this." Hayes's hands moved to the controls with practiced ease. The aircraft immediately steadied. The wild bouncing that had been making Chen's flying so erratic smoothed out. It was subtle, but Rebecca noticed it. So did Chen. The first officer's shoulders dropped slightly as the terror in his eyes faded to manageable fear. "Better?" Hayes asked. "Yeah. How did you experience? What's ATC saying?" Chen relayed the information. Denver Center was clearing them direct to Colorado Springs Airport. Descent to 15,000 feet. Emergency equipment would be standing by. "Copy," Hayes said. Then to Chen. "I need you to pull up the approach plates for Colorado Springs. I haven't flown into that airport in about 20 years, so I'll need to see the runway layout." As Chen pulled up the information on the flight management system, Rebecca continued CPR on Morrison. She could feel Hayes's eyes on her, assessing. "How is he?" Hayes asked. "Not good. Weak pulse. Shallow breathing. Classic MI. Time matters. Tell them we need the fastest route down. Chen, declare emergency priority. Tell them we need vectors for immediate descent." Chen's fingers fumbled on the radio, but he got the message across. Denver Center responded immediately, clearing them to descend at pilot's discretion. Hayes pushed the nose down gently. The aircraft descended smoothly, the turbulence lessening as they dropped below the weather. "Chen, I need you to set flaps to 5, Hayes said. "Then I need you to slow us to 250 knots. "Can you do that?" "Yes, sir." Chen's voice was steadier now. Having someone competent in the right seat, someone who wasn't panicking, was making all the difference. Rebecca watched Hayes work. His movements were precise, economical, no wasted motion, no hesitation. He flew the way surgeons operated, with total confidence and complete focus. "Who are you?" Rebecca asked quietly during a pause in compressions. Hayes didn't look away from the instruments. "Just a passenger who can help." "You've done this before. This isn't your first emergency." "No," Hayes admitted. "It's not. If this story of hidden expertise and ice-cold composure under pressure already has you hooked, hit that like button and subscribe." What happens when this regular passenger reveals why he's so calm about a pilot emergency will remind you that the most capable people are often the ones sitting quietly in the back. Now let's go to 35,000 feet, where 183 passengers were about to discover that the man reading a Tom Clancy novel was more qualified than anyone to save their lives. Thomas Hayes had been reading a paperback thriller when the turbulence started. He'd barely noticed it. After 3,247 hours in an F-22 Raptor, a fighter jet that could pull 9 EGs and fly at Mach 2, commercial airline turbulence felt like a gentle rocking chair. He'd been flying commercial since his retirement from the Air Force 4 years ago. He'd left as a full colonel, commander of the 1st Fighter Wing at Langley Air Force Base. Before that, he'd been an F-22 test pilot at Edwards Air Force Base. Before that, combat missions over Syria and Iraq. But now he was just another passenger. He'd traded his flight suit for khakis, his helmet for reading glasses, his ejection seat for 12A window. And he was fine with that. His flying days were over. He had a consulting job with Lockheed Martin, a nice house in Virginia. Grandkids he actually got to see. Retirement was good. When the announcement came asking for anyone with pilot experience, Hayes had hesitated. He was retired. There were procedures for this. The first officer was probably handling it fine. They didn't need an old fighter pilot who hadn't touched a commercial aircraft's controls in decades. But then he'd heard the panic in the first officer's voice over the PA, heard the way the flight attendant's professional comm was stretched thin, felt the way the aircraft was handling, the erratic movements that suggested someone was struggling at the controls, and his training kicked in. Years of responding to emergencies, of making split-second decisions, of understanding that hesitation killed people. He'd stood up, walked to the front and offered to help. Colorado Springs Tower, United 227 Heavy, emergency descent to 15,000, request priority landing, runway 35. "Right," Chen's voice was almost steady now. He was getting his confidence back, following Hayes's calm example. "United 227, Colorado Springs Tower, you're cleared straight-in approach, runway 35. "Right, emergency equipment is standing by. "Say souls on board and fuel remaining," Hayes answered before Chen could fumble the numbers. 183 souls, approximately 8,000 pounds fuel. Rebecca had moved Morrison to the floor of the cockpit. She'd done everything she could, but without a defibrillator and proper medical equipment, it wasn't enough. Morrison was alive, barely, but he needed a hospital immediately. "How are we doing?" she asked Hayes. 15 minutes to landing. "Maybe less if I push it." Hayes glanced at the instruments. "Chen, I need gear down, flaps 15. We're going to make this a fast approach. Every second counts for your captain." "Gear down, flaps 15, Chen repeated, his hands moving with more confidence now. The aircraft configured for landing. The runway at Colorado Springs appeared in the distance, a long strip of concrete that looked tiny from this altitude but would be plenty big enough. "Chen, you've landed in worse weather than this, right?" Hayes asked. Yes, sir. But you were never alone. I understand. But you're not alone now. I've got the aircraft. You're going to talk me through the landing checklist because my memory isn't what it used to be. Can you do that? Yes, sir. Don't call me sir. I work for a living. It was an old military joke, and it got a small smile from Chen. Call me Tom. Now landing checklist from the top. They ran through it together. Gear down, 3 green lights. Flaps set. Airspeed on target. Approach stable. United 227. You're cleared to land. Winds 320 at 15. Gusting 22. Runway is yours. Hayes clicked the radio. Cleared to land 227. Then to Chen. Watch and learn, kid. This is how we did it in the Air Force. The approach was textbook perfect. Hayes compensated for the gusting crosswinds without even thinking about it. The muscle memory of thousands of landings took over. The main wheels touched down exactly on the 1,000-foot markers. Gentle, smooth, like butter. Chen stared in disbelief. How did you... Practice. Hayes engaged the thrust reversers, brought the aircraft to a safe taxi speed, then turned control back to Chen. You take it from here. Taxi to the gate. Your aircraft, first officer? My aircraft, Chen repeated, his hands taking the controls with something approaching confidence now. Emergency vehicles surrounded them as they taxied. Paramedics rushed aboard immediately to take over Morrison's care. Rebecca stepped back, exhausted, as they loaded the captain onto a stretcher. Is he going to make it? Hayes asked quietly. I don't know, Rebecca admitted, but we got him down fast. That gives him a chance. Hayes nodded and stood to leave the cockpit. His job was done, but Chen stopped him. Wait, who are you? What did you fly in the military? Hayes paused. He'd been hoping to slip away quietly, avoid the questions, go back to being anonymous. But Chen deserved an answer. F-22 Raptor. Air Force, 25 years. Test pilot and combat missions. Chen's eyes widened. F-22? You flew fighters, among other things, and you just landed a commercial airliner like it was nothing? Hayes smiled slightly. It's all flying, son. The principles are the same whether you're in a fighter going Mach 2 or a 737 coming in on final. You just have to stay calm and trust your training. But you saved... Chen's voice cracked. You saved everyone. I was panicking. I couldn't... You did fine, Hayes interrupted. You declared the emergency. You got help. You didn't give up. That's what matters. The rest is just stick and rudder work. Rebecca approached them. The passengers want to thank you. There are news cameras out there. The airline will want to... No, Hayes said firmly. I'm just a passenger who helped. First Officer Chen landed this aircraft. He deserves the credit. But you... I did what any pilot would do. Chen did the hard part, staying calm enough to accept help and work as a team. That's harder than flying. Before Rebecca could argue, Hayes slipped past her and walked back into the cabin. Passengers were standing, applauding, trying to thank him. He smiled, nodded, collected his carry-on and made his way to the exit. A young boy, maybe 8 years old, stopped him. Mister, are you the pilot who saved us? Hayes knelt down to the boy's level. Your first officer saved you. I just helped a little bit. He's the real hero. But my mom said you used to fly fighter jets. I did, a long time ago. That's so cool. Can I have your autograph? Hayes looked at the boy's earnest face, then at the mother standing behind him, tears in her eyes, silently mouthing, "Thank you." Tell you what, Hayes said. When you get home, look up the F-22 Raptor. Read about it. Study hard in school, especially math and science. And maybe someday you'll be the one landing the plane and saving people. How does that sound? Awesome. Hayes ruffled the boy's hair, nodded to the mother, and walked off the aircraft. By the time Hayes made it to the terminal, news crews were already there. Someone had leaked his name. Word was spreading about the mystery passenger who'd landed the aircraft. A reporter with a microphone spotted him. "Colonel Hayes, can we get a statement? What was it like landing that aircraft?" "No comment. Please excuse me, but our sources say you're a retired Air Force fighter pilot." "Is that true?" Hayes stopped, sighed. He wasn't going to escape this. "Yes, I'm retired Air Force. I flew F-22s, and I helped First Officer Chen land the aircraft because Captain Morrison had a medical emergency. That's all. You're a fighter pilot. You had no commercial training. How did you know what to do? Flying is flying. The fundamentals are the same. Chen did an excellent job under extreme pressure. He deserves recognition. But you saved 183 lives. Chen and I worked together as a crew. Rebecca Martinez and the other flight attendants kept everyone calm. The passengers stayed seated and followed instructions. It was a team effort. I just happened to have the right experience to help. Another reporter pushed forward. "Colonel, we've been looking at your service record. You flew combat missions over Syria and Iraq. You were a test pilot at Edwards. You commanded the 1st Fighter Wing. You have over 3,000 hours in the F-22. That's one of the most advanced fighter jets in the world. And you just landed a commercial airliner like it was nothing. That's incredible." Hayes felt the weight of every eye in the terminal on him. Passengers from the flight were gathering. Some were crying. Others were recording with their phones. "It's not incredible," he said quietly. "It's training. The Air Force taught me how to handle emergencies, how to stay calm under pressure, how to trust my skills. That training doesn't go away just because you retire. Any pilot with my background would have done the same thing." "But, look," Hayes interrupted, his voice firm but not unkind. "Captain Morrison is in surgery right now. His life is in danger. First Officer Chen is being questioned by the NTSB. Rebecca Martinez and her crew are being debriefed. Those are the people who deserve your attention. I'm just going to call my wife, tell her I'm okay, and catch the next flight home. Now, if you'll excuse me." He pushed through the crowd, ignoring the shouted questions, and found a quiet corner near a departure gate. His phone rang. His wife, Margaret. "Tom, are you okay? It's all over the news. They're saying you landed a—" "I'm fine, Mags. Everything's fine. I'll tell you all about it when I get home." "You landed a commercial airliner." "I helped land it. Chen did most of the work. Tom." Her voice was gentle, knowing. "You can't just downplay this. You saved people's lives." "I did what I was trained to do." "That's my Tom. Always the humble fighter pilot." She paused. "Are you really okay?" "Yeah, I'm good. Little tired. Need some coffee. But I'm okay. The news is saying the captain had a heart attack." "Is he alive?" "Last I heard, yes. In surgery. Critical condition, but stable." "And you're sure you're okay? No injuries? No stress?" Hayes looked around the terminal, at the passengers from his flight hugging their families, at the relief and gratitude on their faces, at the chance to go home that he'd helped give them. "I'm okay, Mags. Better than okay. I got to do something that mattered today. Got to use my training for something good. That feels right. You've always been good at that. Doing what needs to be done." After he hung up, Hayes sat quietly for a moment. People were still approaching him, wanting to shake his hand, to thank him. He was polite, gracious, but tired. A gate agent approached. "Colonel Hayes, United Airlines would like to upgrade you to first class on the next flight to D.C., and they've asked me to give you this." She handed him an envelope. Inside was a letter on United Airlines letterhead, thanking him for his service and offering him lifetime platinum status. Hayes smiled slightly. He'd been flying economy for 4 years, pinching pennies on his retirement budget. Now he'd apparently earned an upgrade, but that wasn't why he'd helped. He'd helped because people needed him, because he had skills that could save lives, because walking away when you could help wasn't something Tom Hayes knew how to do. His phone buzzed with a text from his son, an Air Force captain currently flying F-35s out of Hill Air Force Base. "Dad, just saw the news. You're a badass. I want to hear the whole story. Love you." Hayes chuckled and typed back, "Just another day of flying. Love you too. Stay safe up there." Another text, this one from his former squadron mate, now a retired brigadier general. "Tom, 247 hours in the Raptor, and you use them to land a 737. That's the most fighter pilot thing I've ever heard. Well done." And finally, one from First Officer Chen, who'd somehow gotten his number. "Colonel Hayes, I can't thank you enough. You saved my life, the captain's life, and everyone on that plane. I'll never forget what you taught me today. Thank you." David Chen Hayes typed a response. "You did great, David. Trust yourself. You're going to be an excellent pilot. Stay humble and keep learning." Tom, the video had 47 million views on YouTube. Retired fighter pilot lands commercial airliner. Full audio. The cockpit voice recorder had been released by the NTSB as part of their investigation. The audio of Hayes's calm voice guiding Chen through the emergency, the smooth professional communication, the perfect landing. It had gone viral. Military aviation forums analyzed every word. Flight schools used it as a training example. News networks played clips on loop. Hayes hated it. He'd given one interview to 60 Minutes and spent the entire time deflecting credit to Chen, Rebecca, and the first responders. He'd politely declined every other interview request, turned down a book deal, ignored Hollywood producers who wanted to option his story. He just wanted to go back to being anonymous. But the Air Force had other ideas. The Secretary of the Air Force had personally called him. They wanted to bring him back as a consultant. Not to fly, he was too old for that and they both knew it, but to teach. To train the next generation of pilots, to pass on the kind of calm competence under pressure that had saved 183 lives over Colorado Springs. Hayes had said he'd think about it. Captain Morrison had survived. Triple bypass surgery, months of recovery, but alive. He'd sent Hayes a handwritten letter thanking him for the extra minutes that had saved his life. First Officer David Chen had been promoted to captain 6 months ahead of schedule. He'd specifically requested that Hayes be at his promotion ceremony. Hayes had attended, standing in the back, watching with pride as Chen received his 4th stripe. Chen had given a speech, crediting Hayes with not just saving the flight, but teaching him what it meant to be a professional pilot. He showed me that competence is built on training, humility, and teamwork. Those lessons will guide me for the rest of my career. Hayes had slipped out before the reception, but not before Chen caught him and shook his hand one more time. "Thank you, Colonel, for everything. You earned this, David. I just showed you that you could do it." Now, 6 months later, Hayes was back on another United flight. Business class this time, thanks to his lifetime status. Reading another thriller. Watching the clouds go by, the flight attendant approached. "Colonel Hayes, I just wanted to say thank you for what you did. It reminded all of us why we love aviation, why we believe in the people who fly these aircraft. Just doing what any pilot would do? Maybe. But not everyone could stay that calm. Not everyone could land that perfectly. You're a hero, whether you want to be called one or not." Hayes smiled. "I'm just a passenger with a little extra experience. But thank you." As the flight continued, Hayes thought about the Air Force's offer, about teaching, about passing on knowledge, about the 8-year-old boy who'd asked for his autograph and said he wanted to be a pilot someday. Maybe retirement wasn't about being done. Maybe it was about finding new ways to serve, new ways to use the skills you'd spent a lifetime building. He pulled out his phone and composed an email to the Secretary of the Air Force. "I've thought about your offer. I'm in. When do I start? Tom Hayes." Then he closed his eyes, settled back in his seat, and let the familiar sound of jet engines lull him towards sleep. Just another flight. Just another day. Except now, he knew that being ready mattered. That staying sharp mattered. That you never knew when your skills would be needed. And Colonel Thomas Hayes, retired fighter pilot, 3,247 hours in the F-22 Raptor, would be ready. Always ready.